Yeah, okay. So next up, we have Beth Zambito from Newburgh Public Library and Hiring for Change.
Okay. All right. So, as Carolyn just introduced me, my name is Beth, and I'm going to be talking today about hiring for change. Oops. Oh dear, why am I not moving? There we go. Okay. So, just a little background information, mostly about me and my experience. I started my public library career 20 years ago as a children's librarian and worked my way up to be the head of youth and teen services at the Poughkeepsie Public Library District. I found myself needing a change after over 12 years there, and I moved on to the Newburgh Free Library, where I started here as the early childhood librarian. I was hired specifically here as a change agent since I was a certified expert in early literacy with the New York State Library. But I still wanted to grow my career in the direction of management and was soon promoted here to the head of adult services position when my predecessor retired. She'd been in the position for many years, and library reference services had changed a lot in that time, and so did the needs of the organization. So I suspect, even though I was never directly told this, I suspect that I was hired more for my management skills and abilities to make positive changes in an organization than for my actual reference experience, because I was still pretty new to that. So long story short, I personally have been hired for the purpose of change in an organization many times, and I know you have too, because any new hire, whether internally promoted or hired from outside, represents an opportunity for change to a department or an organization. So in my case, I was looking to be an administrator, and taking the head of adult services position here would get me closer to that goal, since I was actually replacing the former assistant director. As an aside, there was an existing civil service list at that time for the assistant director, and I wasn't on it. So hence the difference in titles. But that is another workshop for another time. The former assistant director and three other top management positions at the time, three other top managers, were slated to retire within the first 3 years of my hire. So I knew going in that I would be a part of the recruiting, interviewing, and hiring process for their replacements and the overall restructuring of the organization. What I did not anticipate, no one did at the time, was that the now former director would fall ill, and I would almost single-handedly be visioning and making these organizational changes because I was second in command of the library. I can say without exaggeration that I interviewed more than 150 people in the first 3 years of my time in this position, between 2015 to 2018. Mostly librarians, but also library assistants, clerical staff, custodians, and security as well. I was the quintessential accidental hiring manager, as I called myself many, many times. It actually got to the point that I did not want to come to regional networking or continuing ed gatherings when we could meet in person, because I had probably interviewed and turned down at least one person in the room. It was awkward. Let's put it that way. Oops. Oh dear, for some reason I'm not moving. Okay. So anyway, I had to figure out very quickly, under more than your average challenging circumstances, how a fairly large library operated. Not only were there numerous departments that now had no department heads, the Newburgh Free Library is a school district public library in its truest form. The Newburgh Enlarged City School District Board is the library board, and we are also civil service and union. I had to figure out how to navigate all of these layers in order to make incremental changes to create a more sustainable, modern staffing model. I was really, really busy, so never even had time in 3 years to put my initial vision into digital form. So what you see here is just graph paper and pencil for my iterations of the org chart. You may not be able to see it very well, but the original org chart I was incrementally trying to change went from 6 department heads to 3 under that would be under the director. And I accomplished this mostly through restructuring the existing organizational structure through retirements, staff attrition, and making changes in positions that were to be replaced with new hires. My major goals were to have more coordinated services across the library and break down the silos that had been created by these numerous departments and their managers in order to increase communication and collaboration within the library staff structure. So what did I learn through all of this that I came here to share with you today? That I can train anyone on the skills they need to work as a librarian in my organization, but I can't teach the soft skills that are necessary to be a great librarian. So that's what you look for. You look for interest in the profession. Teachability is very important. Empathy for your community members and interest in service to your community. So as it says on the screen, prove your soft skills and you can learn almost any hard skill. Training for new hires on basic functions of a position, giving them the infrastructure on how their position works within the larger organism of the library is key. But the employee has to be creative and take initiative to make the position their own in order to move the department or the organization forward. You can't do that for them. So my job as a manager is to give employees the tools, guidance, and support that they need to take their job to the next level on their own. So you train people well enough so that they can leave. Treat them well enough so that they don't want to. There's been a lot of turnover in the now 5 years that I've been in this position, but I've retained some really good people because of this philosophy that I live and work by. So another lesson that I learned, one person that I hired who has now sat in with me a few times on interview committees calls me the Cassandra of Interviewing because I seem to have a gift of prophecy when it comes to possible issues with candidates for jobs. Trust me, you don't need a crystal ball to see your future experience with a possible new hire. People always show you who they are during the interview. If you feel uncomfortable with the response someone gives to a question, or you detect a red flag during an interview and you still decide to hire that person, because that does happen, that red flag will be the issue that comes up again and again. For instance, if someone has great graphic design skills, but comes off as rigid in the interview when asked about attending outreach efforts for the library, flexibility or lack thereof is going to be a chronic issue with that person. Another example, if someone asks upon being interviewed if the 4-day work schedule you've proposed for a part-time position can be changed to 3 days a week and inquires if extended vacations are okay, perhaps your priorities aren't exactly in line. So I've just learned it too many times. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. So always be sure to check references. I know a lot of you are saying, duh, but it seems obvious, I know. But sometimes you think you know someone, or you've worked in the same organization with them or on the same regional project before, or you know them by reputation. But unless you've supervised that person directly before, always check the references. And Of course, there's often the option to hire externally or to hire an internal candidate. It can be an extremely difficult decision to make to go with an external candidate. Perhaps the internal has worked for years at the organization and they've done a great job in their current position, but they're just not what you're looking for at a higher level that needs to drive the department or the organization forward as you've envisioned it. I've found that sometimes internals want to emulate the employee that was formerly in the position to which they want to be promoted. But it's rare that a position can stay the same over time, particularly in the situation I was in, where I was replacing people who were there for 20 years. So new blood can often make the desired changes you want without too many preconceptions. In fact, I was passed over for my first promotion when I was at Poughkeepsie, and it was a really painful pill to swallow. But now I have to make these decisions pretty consistently, and believe me, it's not easy for anyone at any level. So another lesson learned, you will make some mistakes when hiring, and adjustments will have to be made to your vision. You may have to go back to the drawing board more than once, again and again. And keep in mind that the prevailing culture of the organization, there long before you were, can affect the success of your vision becoming a reality. It can be like quicksand and suck people in. No amount of planning can change that if people are susceptible to these types of things. So you, as the hiring manager, must be the change that you want to see in the world. It's true, lead by example, and your staff will respect you, even if they don't always follow your lead to the letter. So another lesson that I learned, when you are hired for change as a staff member, but particularly at a management or administrative level, you have to respect what was or what is in place in an organization, but don't let that stop you from moving forward anyway. I've just seen too many change agents who come into a large organization and want to make change without first understanding the existing or underlying structure that's in place. It just doesn't work. An established workflow can be stronger than one person, let me tell you. So take the time to make sure you know as much as you can about the thing you want to change and have a plan on how to go about that. Will you encounter skepticism, opposition, downright defiance? Yeah, sure. But remember that even good things can always be better, or at the very least, they need to grow. So just go about it respectfully. You're going to get a lot more buy-in by planting the seed of an idea in order to grow a mindset change throughout the organization. Do this a couple of times before the actual change is made, for which you have a plan with a timeline and the steps to make it happen. Then, most importantly, and oftentimes most challenging, you have to manage the change. You'll have to do a lot of tweaking of your original vision and guiding, supporting of the new hire you ultimately want to be in charge of the change that you want made. Because change without its management is just chaos. Now, I think I coined that phrase. I know I say it a lot. So you need buy-in from administration and staff as well to make big changes that come with a reorg like the one that I had initiated. So be clear in your communication of vision and strategy. What is it you want to accomplish, why, and how? Your plan needs to take the big picture of the organization into consideration and not just the change itself. There's always a cascading effect, sometimes larger or smaller than others, but rarely does something change that it does not impact other functions or other people. So I've talked about a lot of best practices in how to hire for change, which can be extremely difficult in a deeply entrenched work environment. Mistakes will be made, and lots of readjusting of your vision and plan will be done. So the most important asset of any library goes home at night, the library staff. This is my overall personnel management philosophy, and it's worked really well for me, I think. So remember to always keep your sense of humor, have an open heart and an open mind when making changes, because things will not always go as planned. These are people we're working with, and they will have their own thoughts and plans and ideas and desire to shape what they're doing. So listen to your staff, listen to their concerns, and work from their strengths. But always provide the training and support they need to compensate for their weaknesses. Because, excuse me, because ultimately, your vision may be changed too, especially if you get a new administrator or boss, for instance. So always be flexible and willing to compromise and shift your plans, because the last lesson learned that I'll share with you today is the next change or crisis is always around the corner. And trust me, you will weather that storm as well. So here's my contact information. If anybody has any questions after the conference today, feel free anytime to get in touch with me.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, and I'm seeing lots of applause. So let's continue the applause for Beth. Thank you.
Thank you.